Hello! This is Jax3636 here, and I'm here to tell you about the Blank Banshee album, Mega. Blank Banshee is a Canadian producer, electronic music producer. His first album, Blank Banshee 0, came out in September of 2012. I personally absolutely adored that album. It wasn't perfect, but it was great. It was something that, when it came out, and kinda still is, very different in the scene that it was released in. People to this day still debate whether or not it was technically a vaporwave album because of how many different influences Blank Banshee himself put on that album. He recorded his own samples, he used very strange beats to use for vaporwave, very trap influenced, very interesting to say the least. And then he also released his second album called Blank Banshee 1 in October of 2013, and I, personally, didn't like that album at all. The more you listen to it, the more that you realize that it was just gonna be an entire album of the same song. Very little variation. I didn't really like it. And then, in October of this year, Blank Banshee released this album, Blank Banshee Mega. Now, believe me. Hey, why are you wearing the shirt? What? Why are you wearing that album shirt? What, this shirt? Devil and God are raging inside me shirt. Yeah, why are you wearing that emo rock bullcrap? Why are you wearing that shirt? With this shirt, people are gonna think you're giving a biased review. Biased? What are you talking about? Of course I'm biased. People are gonna think you're biased. Yeah, I make Gorillaz fan-made music videos on here. Oh, I wonder what band I like. It's gonna show people you're biased? Yeah, I'm biased. Who gives a goddamn? That album, it has nothing to do with this album even. Why are you bothering to write these reviews? It's the internet. No one cares. Go back to making this bullshit. Anyway, he came out with this album and I was cautious to listen to it because there were two possible outlooks of this album, I felt. It was either gonna be just like the second album that he came out with and I was not gonna like it, or it was going to be like the first album, or he was going to make improvements on it, and it was going to be very, very good, and like the Blank Banshee that I personally loved. And let me tell you something. This album came out into the second category, and I could not be happier. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I review albums in 5 separate categories: songwriting and lyrics, production, how the tracks stand on their own, how the tracks stand as a whole, and the uniqueness of an album. I give each of those categories their own score out of 10, and those separate scores will contribute a number of points to the total overall score of the album. Let's get right into it. Let's go. First category, songwriting and lyrics. Now, Blank Banshee is pushing what people consider to be vaporwave. This album shows that vaporwave isn't just a meme. It can be a real musical genre if you try, if you don't just put a bunch of samples with phasers on an album and call it vaporwave. This is what vaporwave should be. In fact, it shouldn't be called vaporwave. This is not a vaporwave album, alright? This isn't. It's experimental electronic, okay? Blank Banshee uses a lot of samples, a lot of which he recorded himself, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. There are a lot of vocal samples on this album, most of which were recorded by a friend of his that he used to be in a band with. The second track on this album, My Machine, reminds me of the track Bath Salts from his first album, which was, I feel, greatly underappreciated. My Machine just starts off in your face, loud, aggressive, intense, and the vocal samples are freaking all over the place. Vaporwave is supposed to be a calmer, relaxing, chill kind of genre, and this track comes out of nowhere in the very beginning and slaps you across the face and says, how dare you assume that this is gonna be like what I've made before. It's a great example of how the vocal samples he uses are going to be not what you expected. By the time I got into the track Gunshots, I came to the realization that this album was going to be like Blank Banshee 0, but just a lot more refined and with a lot more vocal samples. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. In fact, I'd say it's a great thing. This album is great. Now, would I say it's better than Blank Banshee 0? Hard to say. It could be debated. Blank Banshee 0 is a more chill album. This album is a little more varied. Look, I'm getting off track. I think the vocal samples would count under songwriting and lyrics. For the songwriting and lyrics, I'll give this album 7 out of 10, which will contribute 1.5 total points, the overall score. Move on, production. Production on this album. Definitely, I think, might be the strongest category. The production on this album is airtight. It feels like the music is alive, and that's what really good electronic music that's not trying to be dance music should try to do, and that's what it does. On a technical level, this is the best production yet from Blank Banshee. There's a much wider variety of sounds and samples that he uses on this. It's a much more experimental take on the genre that he's doing that I can't even personally pin down myself. When I'm listening to Meteor Blade, it feels like I'm slowly becoming a half-human, half-virtual being, going to another plane. And yet it doesn't sound like a soundscape, it still has a beat and a bass line and a groove. The best way that I could describe this album is airtight. For the production on this album, I'll give it 9 out of 10, which would contribute 2 points to the overall score. And next up we have how the tracks stand on their own, tracks independently. And unfortunately, you can't win them all. This album is definitely something I think is meant to be listened to from start to finish. Save for My Machine, Echo Chamber, and Cerulean, I think most of these tracks are definitely much stronger when listened to completely from start to finish on the album instead of just on their own or randomly in a playlist, which could be considered both a good and a bad thing, but when it comes to looking at the album, not technically a good thing. For the tracks on their own, I'll give it a 5 out of 10, which will add 1 point to the end score. Tracks as a whole, great. Listen to this album start to finish, great. It's strong. Each is very... I'm losing it. Strong opening, strong middle, strong closing. This album has a huge amount of variety gone through it, which is insane considering what people categorize this album in. The last genre I'd expect to hear variety in is Vaporwave, which proves you shouldn't call this album Vaporwave. It's not. It's not Vaporwave. It has Vaporwave influences. Each one contributes something to the overall feel of the album and yet still is able to feel unique in certain areas. Tracks like Frozen Flame have a nice groove to them, and tracks like Hungry Ghosts are nice and trancy and relaxing. I'm giving the tracks as a whole an 8 out of 10, which will add 1.5 points to the overall score. And lastly, we have the uniqueness category. What does this album do differently? Why should you listen to this album instead of another album in the same category? I'll tell you why. It's because there are barely any other albums in this category. Ever since Blank Banshee released his first album in September 2012, he has been trying his damnedest to create his own unique identity, and since then, he has succeeded at doing that. Even with the album that I didn't like, even with Blank Banshee 1, there were still obvious hints that he was doing something different. And here, not only has he strengthened that personality and unique sound, he's smashed that in, he's hammered it in, he has cemented that he is different, airtight, and unique. There you go. That's how I'll describe this album. Most Vaporwave sounds like background music. In fact, that's what it's supposed to sound like. It's supposed to sound like background music. That's the purpose of Vaporwave. When something like this from Blank Banshee comes on, you instantly wake up and you're grasped by it. The more calmer, trancier tracks could be considered background music at times. After Blank Banshee 1 came out about 3 years ago, since then Vaporwave had built on itself and become different, and then it began to die out. I was expecting to hear stuff I had already heard before on here. No, sir. For the uniqueness, 9 out of 10. Practically perfect. Lovely. Great. 2 points to the end score. And I believe that makes the total score for this album right here 8 out of 10. It's great. It's a great album. Between you and me, I was kind of hoping that I would dislike this album, because that would mean that out of the 3 reviews that have been uploaded to this channel so far, all of them have been positive. You know what? I'm glad. I'm glad this album was good. That means Blank Banshee still has way more stuff to deliver to us, and I cannot wait to see what he'll release next, even if it's 3 years from now. Ugh. If you like electronic music, listen to it. If you like Vaporwave, I don't know if you're gonna like this album, because it's not Vaporwave. Vaporwave is dead. Blank Banshee's alive and kicking, and he's gonna keep kicking. I hope he is. I don't know the guy personally. Whew. This is Jax3636, signing off. YouTube poops. Make more YouTube poops, because that's what people want, right? Do that. Dude, shut up. Hey, remember when you made the Jax 3636 series every month? That was a fun time. No one even watched that. No one even watched that series. No one even likes that series. No one even likes those videos. Go back to
Dude, shut up.